Make no mistake, this is Putin's war. This is Ingrid Rizzolo, and it's my talk once again. Today, we will look at Putin's war against Ukraine and the bungling efforts of the European Union community. This is more than an invasion, it is war. This is Putin's war. And it seems that at this point, Europe lacks the political will and the political fortitude to stop him. Europe and the EU need to quit viewing this war as a spectator sport, for only the exercise of powerful, competent leadership from Europe and the EU could curb Putin's devious ambition. What does Putin want? Putin wants to establish Russia as a force to be reckoned with, a superpower in the new world of his creation. And a belligerent, determined Putin does not care if he sends the world into a tailspin to achieve this, or even if he launches World War III. See, reportedly, Putin views the disintegration of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Consequently, this Russian leader wants to recover what he perceives as the old glory days of Russia. He seeks the realignment of the Soviet bloc. But beyond this, it is Putin's personal ambition to carve out for himself a grandiose legacy in Europe as a leader who returned Russia to pre-Cold War power and curbed Western power and influence in Eastern Europe. And by his brazen actions in his invasion of Ukraine, Putin is challenging the existing leadership structures of the EU, the US, and NATO to stop him. By his actions, he's saying that world leadership is up for grabs. He's currently dominating global narratives. I think the emergent leader is the one who demonstrates competency to rein in Putin. Putin's war is troubling for the historical precedent it evokes. His actions suggest that he's recasting himself as the new Hitler. For one, Hitler indulged in victim blaming. Hitler blamed the Jews for the weakness of his country. He then proceeded to wipe them out, causing the genocide of the Holocaust, which is such a blotch on world history, a genocide that has its parallel only in the enslavement of African people in the New World. Like his alter ego, Hitler, Putin blames Ukraine for the war by referring to Ukrainians as drug addicts and neo-Nazis. In his warped mind, he is fighting a war to rid Ukraine of these elements. He claims that his mission is the denazification of Ukraine. Putin's war parallels precedents set by the revered historical figure of Hitler. Hitler executed 11 million victims whom he deemed unworthy of life. For his part, Putin deemed unworthy of life the more than 1,417 civilians killed, 2,038 injured according to UN sources, and more than 3.8 million people that have fled the country to date. Bodies of dead civilians that line the streets and the thousands of others who were seemingly executed and carelessly tossed into mass graves were also deemed unworthy of life. Putin seems determined to crush Ukraine like a bug unless Ukraine bows in surrender. The Russian leader seems ready to decimate much of Ukraine if that is what it takes to bring Ukraine to heel. He seems bent on forcing the Ukrainians into vassalage. That all this is happening in Europe's backyard is worrying. Even more worrying is the European response. In 1938, Hitler leveraged his assault on the Czechs, premised on the weak leadership that existed in England at the time and on the American nation not wanting to get into European conflict. At that time, the Czechs looked to the great powers of Europe, Great Britain and France under Neville Chamberlain and Edward de Ladier for help. But these nations chose to pacify rather than to intervene. Czechoslovakia was left vulnerable. In 1939, a mere 1 year later, Hitler's army amassed all of Czechoslovakia. The last democracy of Eastern Europe had fallen into totalitarian rule. We can hope this is not the fate of Ukraine. Has Europe not learned from inactions of the past and as such are liable to repeat them? It is now 8 decades later, and Ukraine is looking to the West for potent and effective help. And European leaders seem to be again engaged in walking a tightrope to appease Russia. This European compromise or European hesitancy, as obtained in Hitler's time, is fueling Putin's advance. Perceiving an indecisive and weakened European Union, Putin feels free to impose his will on Ukraine. The reins of control and the reins of diplomacy have fallen for the most part in the lap of the US. However, America seems overcautious after the debacle of Afghanistan, sticking to war by sanctions. An indecisive Europe, following the lead of the US, also imposed sanctions on Russia. But this does not seem enough to stop the Russian bear, who is intent on destroying Ukrainian sovereignty. Russia just merely became more committed to progressively more daring acts as a result of these economic sanctions imposed on it. Where are the luminaries of Europe? I think that the European Union has the power to stop this Russian madness. What is it waiting for? What the EU has done so far paints a picture of a bungling Europe. Who would have thought that these former conquerors of the world are not sufficiently powerful and so lacking in capacity to stop Russia? Where are the luminaries of the great Europe? A Europe which projected itself as the great civilization. Every day this war is prolonged is a day too much. Perhaps Europe and the European Union have a plan which is not yet perceptible. Imperceptible plan notwithstanding, how long will Europe watch and wait, seemingly unsure as to what move to make? This seeming inaction and sluggishness will make the European Union complicit in the destruction of Ukraine. Not only this, but European inaction can impact the balance of power in Europe and ultimately in the world. It is early in the 21st century and things are already reaching a tipping point. The world is tilting towards authoritarianism. Who will stop it? Meanwhile, Russia feels free to act like a colonial power, reckless in its determination to re-establish its stake on the unwilling colony of Ukraine. Putin already declared, I am confident that the true sovereignty of Ukraine is possibly only in partnership with Russia. He also declared that a separate Ukrainian ethos never existed, doesn't exist, and cannot exist. To him, Ukraine must maintain Soviet identity. Ukrainians will have none of this, and so they face off with their Goliath in a tenacious fight for a democratic future and to show Russia that their national sovereignty must be respected. It is early in the 21st century and things, as I said before, are reaching the tipping point and the world is tilting towards authoritarianism. The premise of this conflict presents the argument for a redefinition of world leadership. Who will or what will rise up to take the reins of leadership in the world? Will the EU do it? Can the EU do it? A new political will is needed to galvanize Europe. This war will inadvertently catalyze a new and stronger European Union leadership or result in its obsolescence. Times demand that Europe arises from its torpor and surge into a new kind of decisive leadership. And the world in general should be concerned, as a wave of global COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated. Pretty soon the fate of Ukraine may come knocking at your door. This is Ingrid Rizzolo, and it has been my talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Bye for now.